call to order this meeting of the Community Preservation Committee at 5:30 p.m. March 9th, 2023. As you may have just heard, this meeting is being recorded by the CPC. And if anyone else is recording, you're required to let me know. All right, hearing none. Let's do a roll call because it's kind of hard for me to see everyone who's here. So I'll just go down the list here. Garth.
Here.
Tom.
Here.
Wisty.
Here.
John.
Yep.
Susan.
Yes.
Giannis. I seem Giannis is not here. Okay, Donna.
Yep.
And Dave.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm also here. So everyone is here except for Giannis. It's a pretty good turnout. So first thing on the agenda is approval of minutes from February 23rd, 2023.
So moved. Second.
All right, we had a motion that was second. Any other comments on the minutes?
Nope.
Okay, I'm just gonna do roll call votes just because it's easier for me because I can't it's hard for me to see everyone. So Garth.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Wisty.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Donna.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
All right, and I'm also a yes. So the minutes from February 23rd are approved. All right, so we can get on to new business. The first one on there is the CPC supplementary budget process. Christian, I don't know, do you want to present that?
Sure. So basically the supplementary budget process is how things are going to play out after all of you do your recommendations. The mayor's office did some research, mostly East Hampton, how East Hampton does their process. What's laid out here is pretty much exactly what they do, if not slightly tweaked. And so this has been sent by the mayor to city council, and Ways and Means, or one of the committees, is doing this, and it'll become the official procedure for city council. I guess I can read it. So all of you will vote to recommend funding, and then community development department, which is me, I will send it to the mayor, and the mayor is obligated to send the budget request to city council, so she will officially send it. And then city council will receive it and they will send it to Ways and Means. Ways and Means will hold their hearing. They'll make a recommendation, which is non-binding, to the full city council. City council will hold their public hearing and they'll take a vote on the requests, the project requests, which only need a simple majority. And then they'll be sent to the mayor, who signs off on the appropriations. The mayor may not veto these. And she will send notification to finance and to me. And finance transfers the project funds into their own accounts. Bonds, we're not doing bonds at the moment. And I will work on the grant agreement between the applicant and the city. I'll issue an award letter and I will supervise the project. So pretty much lays out exactly pretty much everything that's going to happen after you guys do your recommendations. So yeah, I'm very grateful to the mayor and her staff for helping put that together.
Yeah, no, nice.
It's good.
Very nice. Nice and clear. And
Yep.
yes, very clear. It's good stuff. We're just at the beginning part. And I know that's
In the process,
just get the
like,
thing going.
can anybody change what we recommend?
So when it gets to city council, they cannot increase it. They can either keep it the same or they can decrease it. So they can change it, but they cannot increase it.
And
And what about,
they also can't fund any projects that we don't recommend.
Exactly. Yep.
Did you have another question?
I was wondering about Ways and Means when it says they hold a hearing and.
Yeah. When like a certain kind of financial orders go before Ways and Means of the city council, they just have to hold a hearing on it. Like kind of like how we do every year, just to gather public comment officially. This is the official time for people to speak on it. So I'm assuming that's what that's referring to.
And I think that's just for like city council. Technically, then they have to decide whether to fund the projects or not, even if we've recommended it. Even though it seems like in almost all cases, generally projects do get funded if the CPC recommends it in other cities and towns.
If there was somehow something that like slipped through and it got to city council and there was like a huge public outcry.
You mean the
Right.
doghouse for that I wanted is not going to go through? Oh,
Shh, you're supposed to put that in. It's like a little amendment.
Right.
But they could conceivably could reduce something to zero.
right.
Yeah, it's just extra set of eyes on everything.
Christian, I know you had a like a form that was on.
Oh yeah, I guess I can share that too. It's basically based on what East Hampton uses. So this is mostly internal. I don't think this will be anything you guys would have to fill out. This is something I'd fill out with the finance department. But it's basically the kind of form, and it says exactly what accounts are being pulled from to fund the project,
Okay.
and where to send it to in the new project account. And it also, I'll create like a one sentence that kind of describes the project just a little bit, so the city clerk can put that in a legal ad, so people know what they're attending when they go to the public hearing.
Okay, great.
Great.
Something like the appropriated portion, right? If something was getting 20,000 from housing and 30,000 from unrestricted, you'd have it all in there, right? Because because finance is already.
Yeah, so it could potentially be, technically up to 4 categories, because you have just your reserves that just from like however many years back, and then you have the active year's budget. And if you're pulling from the historic and the general from both, I guess technically you could have 4 categories there. But obviously that's something me and finance to worry about.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like we've, or not we, but you and the mayor's office and finance have kind of figured this all out. So it's good that that's figured out before we're making our recommendation.
Yeah, city council should be reviewing it like their current this month's cycle of looking things over, and so they'll officially have it as a policy.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on that before we move on? Okay. So next on the agenda is signage for approved projects. And this is one that I asked Christian to add to the agenda because we've kind of talked in general in the past about requiring some kind of signage at project sites, and that was highly recommended to us by Stuart. But I don't know. We've never really talked about like what kinds of signs we were gonna have people put up, or whether some cities and towns do like permanent signage or a plaque that has to go up saying this was funded with CPA funds, or some people put up like banners during construction saying part of this was funded with CPA. So I just thought it'd be good to have a discussion before we actually get around to voting on projects, because if there are any conditions, I think we need to mention that in our motion to fund the projects. And one thing I just thought about today, I'll add before we discuss, is that I was thinking we could, I don't know if this is how it's done in other places, but we could just say like, requiring a sign to be agreed upon, prior to construction, then we could like work with them and like figure out what would work for their site or whatever. I don't know. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on if anyone has any strong feelings about permanent signs or banners during construction or things like that. And if you do, go ahead, because it's hard for me to
Okay.
see.
Yeah, it's Susan. I don't feel like we need permanent plaques or things like that. That seems a little grandiose to me. But I think that something during construction and possibly during the year until the next funding cycle comes out, or at least a few months, it's something like that I think would be good, especially as things are developing. Somebody, in the case of the housing, for instance, it's going to take a while to build that. Having that there would be a nice thing to do as they're renovating the shelter and as they're, that kind of thing. I just think it's a good thing to have during that time. I'm not sure we need something that's there in perpetuity.
And, go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I was going to say, I sort of like your idea of it. It'll kind of depend, like on some of the things, like if there's something that includes signage, like if we do the Highland Park sign stuff, it would certainly seem reasonable to have funded in part or in whole or, whatever it ends up being, with CPA funds, because they're, part of the project is making a sign anyway. But then, for some other construction things, I could certainly see either having a banner or even just like lawn signs are kind of cool because you kind of stick them out there. They're reasonably cheap. Yes, they get beat up. Probably can't keep them for too many years, but they're easy just to put out there.
Yeah, this is Wisty, and I love something permanent, and partly and not even necessarily big, but I love the historic value of thinking down the road 15 years, it'd be kind of interesting walking around Greenfield, and seeing those things. And I'm thinking like, when I'm in the woods and if I see a survey marker, and they're only this big, I love that. It's like centers me. I get a sense of history. It's like, oh, somebody was here this long ago.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everybody. So let me start by saying that. I can see both sides of it. So I could see definitely in a big project like the housing thing, like a banner. And I think maybe we should invest in a nice, good sized banner that we kind of roll up and we keep it and we put it out and that we can reuse it, and maybe even lawn signs too, like both. And I think for some projects, I would like to see like a small plaque. I'm like with Wisty, absolutely on that. Something pretty small, and you see it, and you're like, oh, nice. See, CPC, because I think that it kind of 5-10 years out and you're at a thing or whatever it is, and you're like, oh, right on. See, yeah, nice. Good to know that they're out there doing that. Or it does sort of lend itself. I think it's totally worth doing that.
I agree, because I think that over time, as these projects build up, you're going to have people who see them, and it will help with pushback against, why do we have to pay this extra money for our taxes? My question is, are we paying for the signs? Is that part of, are we requiring them to do it?
Good question.
Yeah, we can pay for that with our administrative funds.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to withdraw my question about in perpetuity. No, what I was thinking about is when I was in Lithuania, there were a whole bunch of things where the EU had helped pay for something.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to walk by and go, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
So I think that this fits in that category. So I withdraw my temporary as opposed to permanent.
Nice.
Well, and I guess there's also the other thing, which is like, if, like we were saying, if it's like a big project that there's like a lot of people walking past, 99% of them aren't going to see a little plaque. But if you had a big sign, people are going to see that. So I guess it's kind of like what the goal is. Is it, because I've been in Northampton and seen like the big banners that are like, thank you for funding this with your CPA money. And
Well,
yeah,
I think there's different issues, like
yeah,
whoever, Garth, John, who said, like have something that we could roll out and give to people while things are being constructed and stuff. I think that's wonderful. And, we could hand it to them. And I'm thinking if it were just something little, that I'm saying that I like, if somebody wanted to take that and even incorporate it into a wood sign or something, whatever. But they're two different issues, one's more immediate and to call attention. One is the historic and, the EU helped pay for this. So I think they're two different issues, and I think both of them are really good to recognize.
And so, yeah, I guess then it could be either, maybe some projects require both, or some it's
Right.
one or the other, or,
Yeah.
I mean, some
Yeah.
projects, like, studying, potential, bike routes, for example, might not have a physical location where, the project is happening.
Right, yeah.
And then that a sign might not. So I guess it'll kind of depend on the project. So I guess I just wanted to make sure we talked about this before we get around to like motioning to fund projects next time, because I think we'll have to mention that, we have to mention like any of the conditions. Oh, yeah, Christian, go ahead.
I was thinking something like this would be something laid out in the grant agreement. I don't know if it would necessarily be part of like the motions you guys do, because like the conditions seems more like something like contingent upon receiving other funding, like more like big stuff like that. Like when I do, so kind of unrelated, but like when I do local cultural council stuff, they approve the projects and then they have agreements that the projects sign on to, and it lays out their publicity and stuff like that. Something in kind of like an after the fact kind of thing. I mean, you guys can, but I don't know how other communities do it, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't know how others do it either. And I guess I'm thinking about it from the Conservation Commission perspective, where like any special conditions we want have to be specifically mentioned in our meeting, like while we're voting on it. But
Christie had a hand raised.
oh yeah, maybe Christy, do you have some input on this?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I shared with Christian, there is a little technical page on the CPC site that has samples of signs, and like the park grants and LWCF grants, you just have to have the logo and have it stated somewhere on your sign that says funded in part by, and whatever the grant is. So I think that's the simplest thing. I sent it in a chat to you, Christian. If you want to.
Yeah.
We're looking at it.
I've got it up over here. It's under the technical assistance of the cpc.communitypreservation.org, but I don't know if people take a look. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see that there are some also that are banners, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can obviously do a bunch of different
Yeah.
Here we go.
Hey, there we go.
options.
There we go. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of making it we can mention when we're finalizing stuff with people like, hey, obviously you're gonna have to like put some sort of CPA thing on it. If it's a report, it's just, it's mentioned in it's usually mentioned in the head of the report. If it's a big signage thing, if it's all the construction things usually have big banners, it's going to say like funded by DHCD and the mayor and the governor and all that shenanigans, and it can have a,
I like this, CPA funds at work kind of approach to, while it's in process, and then something smaller that's more permanent. I think that all makes sense.
Yeah, sounds good.
if it's anything concrete, we can just get a little brass plaque and stick it in
Like actual concrete.
And I don't know if we mentioned this like in our plan at all, but maybe like in an update to our plan for next year, we could like mention that projects will have, signage. If a project involves a physical location at all, there will be a signage requirement or something just to like lay out what our intention is in there. Cause I don't know if we had thought of that really when we were doing the plan. So, but that's after next meeting. We're not to updating the plan yet.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in general, people expect that, as Christian mentioned, like the cultural council stuff all requires, even if you're only getting $400 for your your school play thing, the flyer for it has to say, funded in part by Mass.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Any other discussion on that before we move on? Okay. So next we have updates from applicants. I don't know, Christian, could you maybe?
Yeah, so we had this happened. We had two updates from applicants, kind of since the last meeting, like major updates. One was from George's project, the Safe Bicycle Link. He has shifted his request from our CPC down to 20,000, and the person applying in Deerfield is now applying for 30,000. So that's lessening the amount that he's requesting from you guys. And then we also received a pretty substantial support letter from the opioid task force for the CSO project. And so I think you guys have all looked at those, but I wanted to just have that on the agenda so everyone's aware. And then I think that's it. I don't think there's any other really major updates unless remember any, Travis.
Okay.
Travis, George would like to speak. Is that?
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say if there are any applicants at this meeting who might have an update that's in addition or wanted to talk about it, that we could just do that now since we have that on the agenda.
George, do you want to come sit up here by the mics?
Yeah, I might not be able to hear you very well.
Yeah, there was one other update I sent to you and Christian about the timeline of the Deerfield CPA process. So that it, while March 1st was actually the deadline for putting in the application, they will be deciding, the CPC there will be deciding after this committee has decided, but before the Greenfield City Council has made their decisions. So I just wanted people to have that timeline. It was surprising to me. And so the city council would have that information in hand if this project were to go forward. So I just wanted people to know that as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. And yeah, like I said, I don't know of any other updates from applicants and don't see anyone else raising their hand to offer any, so I'll assume there are none right now. Okay. All right. Gonna get back to my agenda here. All right, so now next on the agenda is really kind of the main reason for this meeting, I guess, which is review of public comments from February 23rd and feedback from the Google form. And this was a presentation that Christian and I co-authored, I guess.
Yeah.
So if you want to walk through the first part.
Thank you for that.
Of course. All right. So the first half is me and the second half is Travis. So the first half, all of you had a Google Form survey that was sent out. And the first part of this is kind of breaking down who responded. So you had 327 total respondents. It's a pretty good number. Yeah, so 327, 159 were from Greenfield, 99 were from Franklin County, not including Greenfield. And you had 69 from other parts of the country, mostly obviously in Massachusetts. You also had a data from Google Forms that allowed you to see where people clicked first, which projects they went to first. Most went to the Franklin County Agricultural Society's project. Then you had a number who just went up to all the projects and then pickleball, and then kind of just going down from there where they clicked first. After that, we have the actual survey questions, just as a refresher. We had one asking, is this project valuable to the people of Greenfield? One asking, is this valuable to me as a citizen? And then the last one was, is this a good use of CPA funding? And then there was also kind of just a long answer text box. That's what Travis will be covering in his part of the presentation. And so here's how many responses each project actually received, because we didn't require everyone to respond to every project. They could respond to as many as they wanted. You'll see the Agricultural Society had 240, and then all the way down at the bottom, the site amenities only had 60. So there's a range of how many each one got. And here is the scores. This is the exciting stuff. So you can, you can see, so just kind of explain. So every project had a score 1 to 5 for each category. People Greenfield, me as a citizen, and good use of CPA funding. And then for each of those, there's an average on the right that kind of combines the three into one number to rank all of them. So they're ranked. We can come back to this probably when you guys are talking about projects. And then I also have this slide here, just for the committee to use if they think it's useful. It's your scores from your CPC score sheets compared to where they were scored on the survey. Obviously, those two weren't ranking the exact same thing, but I think it might be useful to see where things aligned and where things didn't align. So yeah, that's the results.
And you highlighted the ones that are greater than 3 positions difference.
Yep. Yep. And so we can, I don't know if we want to talk about this part of it now or go through Travis's stuff and then talk about everything. You just want to move on to your stuff, Travis?
Unless anyone has something they need to say right now or wants to talk about this right now. I'm hearing.
Well, let's go.
All right. So then the written comments, I also threw in, we had like 4 or 5 emails that had been sent to us. And I just included those in with the written comments because they weren't really counted anywhere else. And so what I did was I went through all the comments and I put them into one of these categories that I came up with based on what were in the comments. And so you can see it ranges. I put them in order in my mind of like most positive on the bottom and most negative on top. So you can see like highest priority on the bottom and then, you know, whether it was a great value, whatever. And then we'll just walk through like, so I'll highlight some of these because some of them are, you know, kind of significant looking. So you can see like the Wells Street housing, that one got by far the most highest priority comments. You can see like trail restoration. Yeah. And then, going to like great value. These were people saying like, well, it's not a lot of money and, you know, it's a good thing to do. So why not? So, you know, Highland Pond, the light shop equipment and the ADA track all got pretty significant numbers of great value comments, as I called it. And then there are, you know, comments where people were saying that they weren't really sure whether this was something that was needed or if people would even use it. And the 2 biggest ones for that were the pickleball project and the Beacon Park improvements. And then there were comments where people were saying like, you know, this seems like, you know, maybe there needs to be more research done before this kind of project could get funded. Maybe there are things they didn't think the applicant had thought through all the way. And the 2 biggest there, the Highland Pond by far got the most of those kind of comments. And then also the site amenities project. I think a lot of people were confused about maybe what it meant exactly, I think. And then the Shattuck Park and the site amenities projects, there were a number of comments saying they either had concerns about whether they would be maintained long-term or, you know, specifically calling out vandalism and, you know, saying that they didn't think they would last very long because of vandalism and lack of maintenance. So just pointing that out there. And then I put this one in bright pink just so it was easier to see because it's kind of relevant, I think, for us. This was people saying that they, you know, maybe they thought this was a project that was good and should be funded, but that it should be funded by some other means other than CPA funding. And so you can see like the Wells Street housing, that one had the most of those kinds of comments. And then the other ones are the trail restoration, fairgrounds, pickleball, historical society, and the ADA track. So that there were a number of those. And then the last like big category, other than just like general support, is people saying that they thought the project was too expensive, and they shouldn't be funded because they were too expensive for what they were. And that was pickleball got the most of those comments, followed by the Highland Park drinking fountain, the trail mapping project, and the site amenities project. And then there were some people just saying this project is not needed. Like, we don't need this project in Greenfield. And that's that dark red color for, you can see there at pickleball, Highland Park drinking fountain, Shattuck Park, and the bike study. And then Christian, before you go, if you go back one slide again, I didn't like circle this, but just so there is like the largest color for most of these is that one that just says support. And that was just that light green color is just, any comments are just saying, oh, this is a good project, we should fund it. Just general support where they didn't really say anything specific. That's what most of the comments were. So I didn't really like circle that and, go through it, but you can see the fairgrounds obviously had the most of those. So yeah, Christian, you can go ahead now.
Well, the fairgrounds also had the most respondents, so
Yeah.
if all those people responded, then it's gonna be a bigger line, so.
Yeah, and then what I did was I broke all of those categories that you just saw into either positive, kind of a mixed review, or negative. And you can see here how I did that. So you could either agree or disagree with how I put things together, but that's how I put them together. And then if you go to the next slide, so this is the percentage of comments that each of those projects got that fell into either one of those positive, mixed, or negative comments. And again, this is just the written comments. This isn't, like the scores that people left or anything like that. So you can see Highland Park drinking fountain, that one had the most negative comments, percentage wise, followed by pickleball, trail mapping, Shattuck Park site amenities. So yeah, that's my overview of the written comments. And then I did send I think Christian sent out the written comments to all the CPC members
Yes.
that included my categories on each comment. So, if someone thought they didn't agree with how I categorized the comment, you all have that information and can, modify that in your mind as you'd like, I guess. So, yeah, I think that's the end of that presentation.
Thank you, Travis. This was really helpful.
Yeah, super cool, super
Yeah,
cool.
very good.
Could I ask Christy a question that we came out of this? Christy, are you still there? Christy?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm here. I just had to move my pictures so I could see the screen.
I just let there sometimes neighbors know things that nobody else knows, and I was just wondering, there were the questions about vandalism at Beacon Field. Since there's other stuff there, is that an issue there?
No, my comments about the concern about vandalism, obviously vandalism can happen anywhere, whether
Right.
it's on a park bench, in the parking garage, or a playground. The equipment that we're putting in is, like the Shattuck Park equipment specifically, is designed by a playground company. There aren't moving pieces, and that's why we've selected this type of structure. I just think that those that respond may not have seen all or known all the details. The site amenities, the concrete things were selected because it's you can't move them because they're heavy, so they're not going to be put into a river or stolen, and it's really hard to hurt concrete. So that's the reasons why we select those things. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that is the question. I just wondered if there was something that someone who lived around those parks might know, and that was the reason they wanted to make that comment. So that's fine. That's great. Thank you.
I would follow up, Christy, can you talk about the level of vandalism that you've seen just in general, like for parks and, in your purview?
Sure. I mean, the biggest vandalism that we have, sadly, is graffiti, and that happens everywhere. We had a situation last summer at Hillside, but I spent many hours out there myself scrubbing it off. As soon as you see it and you remove it, then it had, knock on wood, it hasn't happened since. Poet Seat Tower, as we all know, has really been tagged recently, and we're working on cleaning that up. But outside of that, like people, and again, I hate to say this, haven't really broken many things. There's certain things that break with overuse, but we replace them and maintain them.
Yeah, from reading some of the comments, I think people were like unclear on what was like, oh, you're gonna like put a, whatever cornhole thing. Well, somebody's just gonna run away with the bags, but it's like, there's not gonna be just 3 bags sitting there. That's not how it's gonna go. Because you're right, they'll be soggy.
Like the chess table that we put in, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. I mean, that's the same company, and it is highly used. We've bought chess pieces, they haven't been stolen, and people are using that all the time. So that's the type of equipment we'd be purchasing.
Thanks, Christy.
Yeah, thanks. Is there anything, is there any one of these slides someone wants to look at to discuss more? Yeah, Christian, maybe that one we could start with.
Yeah, because this is everything kind of ranked out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's all sorts of statistical analysis, but I was mentioning sort of before we started that some of these end up feeling a little bit like the Valley Advocate, like best restaurant, best hamburger kind of thing, right? It's whoever activates their email list to be like, say that's the best hamburger, like,
Right.
So that's cool that, the Agricultural Society has 240 people that are willing to, log on, or it was 100 it was 180 where the people that where they came in straight and be like, yes, I'm here to support that. And maybe they click through some others, but, sort of looking at those numbers, I'd say like 65 people went through the whole thing, and, right? Or saying, right. There's a few places that kind of activated groups like the pickleball, the bar and restoration, but by and large, people just sort of would go through and be like, oh, this is a good thing to do.
I mean, it does show that there are people passionate enough about the barn rehabilitation to take the time to do that. Whereas, I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's not to totally discount it. And then it is also interesting to compare the barn rehabilitation with pickleball, because that one also got like twice as many comments as most of the other projects, but it was ranked one of the lowest too. So
I do have the how many like 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s. I have the charts for those too, if those are useful at all. Because for the pickleball one is interesting because it's a 3.
5s and 1s.
It's a 3, but it's because it's the average of a bunch of 1s and 5s.
Yeah. So
Like reading through the comments, there were a lot of people like, does anybody even play pickleball?
Yeah.
Right, it's not the most helpful comment.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's sort of like I don't know, I don't play pickleball, so that's, which is valid, right? Is it valid, useful to me as a citizen? No.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of the amount of money they were asking for and whether people recognized it as a a sport that they had any knowledge of at all. So you had the people who knew were like, yeah, this
Yeah,
is great. And the people who didn't know it was like, this is a lot of money for something that I don't even
Yeah,
know
I mean,
about. And so I think that's why it ended up as 3.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so, people like, well, can't you just play like on a tennis court? People are going to say that about any of those projects.
Right.
That doesn't, maybe they didn't take the time to research it. Maybe that's a valid point. I don't know. I mean, I think one of the big takeaways for me from Travis crunching all those graphs and everything is I found a lot of validation of the conversations that we had and the stuff that we fleshed out in our talking.
Yeah.
I felt like that the legitimacy of that was borne out in some of the graphs. Like I was like, yeah, I'm glad to see that sort of all those other people combined kind of corroborate our thinking. That made me feel good that we're in support of that track.
Yeah.
Right, that wasn't completely.
Yeah, we're not like,
Opposite thing, like,
no.
whoa, I never would have thought of that.
And I want to say something about the barn rehabilitation. And this might be a stereotype, this is a stereotype that I have in my head. But, a lot of the people who use the barn rehabilitation are not going to be using necessarily Highland Park, this and that.
Right.
Because they have different activities. And so I think to have stepped up, to have that many people step up is pretty incredible. And, I think it's saying, there are a whole bunch of people who aren't necessarily doing things that are focused downtown, who really care about this money and about how you're going to spend it. And
Yeah.
I would also venture that a lot of the people that we got that were maybe from Franklin County, but not from Greenfield. Is.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Anyway,
Well, these were good. Yeah.
Yeah, very
It's really helpful.
All right. What's the next task?
Yeah.
Do we want to go back to like the next slide again? Just
Comparing.
Well, one of the things that I've been thinking about is that as people are providing feedback, they're not necessarily super familiar with some of the constraints on CPC money. Like, as we look at some of these projects, we're like, oh, okay, well, that's really great. But then also, how do we know that we're going to be able to control it or like meet all of these requirements? That's not something that is part of this. So that's something we have to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Independent of this.
I mean, I think again, like to me, what's valuable is these people, these people are shooting from the hip. They're coming in and saying like, yeah, what's pickleball? Or like, who plays that? Or why do we need this water fountain? Or we should do that, all that kind of stuff. So, that I feel like that's really valuable.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing was that although they may not have looked at the projects as certainly as carefully as we've been looking at them, the idea that people had to have skin in the game, that there had to be some resources, even though some of them were rated lower, but they didn't know that essentially we've got 1-to-1 or even better than 1-to-1 matches on some of those things, that kind of thing.
Well, I did think about that also, Susan, but actually when I created the form and I did the little description, I said total cost of project and CPA money requested. So I think that there was some awareness of, like with the pickleball, like fund it all, versus we've got money from other places with other things.
Yeah. I mean, I think like in an imaginary world, if pickleball was like $5,000.
Yeah.
Everybody'd be like, oh, yeah, I totally support it.
Right.
Price tag is,
Yeah, it's more than,
Exactly.
it's more than we have.
Exactly. And I think that alone might have just turned people off immediately.
Yeah.
Like how it could never be that good.
Right.
And I mean, we're kind of imagining what people are thinking, but for sure, you're going to look at it and be like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the other hand, when we had our public meeting, the people who came were very committed. The people who came, and so there's that balance that I think we have to look at as there, not just folks who are casually looking at it, in a form, but folks who are saying, we do this, we connected with all these people. So I think there's a balance there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we all want to feel good at the end of the journey that we did do our due diligence to reach out to as many people as we could in every possible way. You know,
Yeah.
Speaking of other funding, do we know a timeline on
Capital.
like on either capital or CDBG?
Yes, I did contact Ginny, and she said that that the capital vote will happen after we make our decisions. So I think that, yeah, so that, because she asked me when we were going to, so we're making our decisions on the 23rd. The vote will come after that. So I think probably what we need to do is look at this from the point of view of if there's something we want to fund, putting a stipulation that if it's one of the two things that the mayor's putting forward, but it would not, if the city funds it, then the CPA would not, or whatever, however we want to do that. But so I think that because we won't have the answer before we vote.
No, we won't. I think Ways and Means is meeting. I mean, it goes to Ways and Means first, and they're meeting next week. And then they make a recommendation to city council.
That's
So we have
correct.
a couple of
That's correct.
hurdles. Like, I mean, I don't know if Ways and Means could potentially.
Ways and Means could say no, and
Yeah,
that would be
and
the end.
That would be their
Yeah,
recommendation.
Right.
I mean, city council can change their, they don't have to abide by it, but
You're talking about the two projects.
I'm talking, the capital funding for the trails and the bocce. So that's what I think we have to deal a lot with, is like having some contingencies or if-then statements. I think that's a big thing to sort of figure out how we proceed.
Right, could certainly be part of our.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the two ways to do it are to either, go ahead and vote to fund projects that are also up for capital funding, with stipulations, or choose not to vote for projects that are up for capital funding.
Right.
And then say like, well, if they don't get capital funding, feel free to apply for CPA funding next year. That's another valid way of doing it too. Tom, do you have a comment?
No, my point is, I think where there's a municipal project, the capital should be a piece of it. And if capital chooses, or the city council chooses not to fund something, I think that's a good representation of the citizens too, since all 9 precincts are being represented there. If city council or capital chooses not to fund something, I'm not sure then we should go back and think it's a priority for us to fund. If they're municipal, there are some things that aren't municipal, but if the city doesn't see value in having some skin in the game, where we can help, I'm not sure that that's a project that should go forward.
I just wanted to add that the bocce is an example of one where they have already partially funded it. So they kind of have skin in the game on that one, but now,
right. I'm just thinking of like some of the others. If they, I don't know. That's just one man's opinion. It may not be a valid one to this group. That's how I see it.
All right. I think Donna has an opinion too.
Yeah, I just, I'm suffering from chicken or egg syndrome here because like, representing a recreation department, like this is going to affect us. Like we've had the mayor push through some things for capital. Like we don't want to lose the capital and we don't want to lose the CPC. Like if you guys say no because capital's going to fund it, then, capital doesn't come through. Or if we say yes and then then the city council says, well, you don't need us to fund you because now you have CPC money. Like, I'm really struggling with that. I don't know how we get around that. And so that's why I'm looking for some creative contingencies or, stipulations, as you mentioned, some if-then statement.
I agree. I think that's what we need to do, depending on what we decide. If we
Like,
decide.
yeah, I mean, for instance, on the bocce thing, where they're asking me 80,000 both from us and from capital. So we could just say like, yes, this amazing project, like we're in, let's do it. Or we could say like, we will give 40 if capital also gives 40, otherwise we do nothing.
Right.
Or we could say like, we'll do 40 and then if we want to get the second court and capital is willing to kick in the 40 for that half of it. I don't know if that's exactly how it breaks out.
Yeah, it's tricky because if we say, well, capital, you've recommended 80, but now we're saying we only want 40. Well, that's great, but then that would be 40 that we could have potentially had in CPC, that we would lose out on because we went first.
Yeah,
Right, and capital's not going to come back and be like, well, we got an extra 40,000. What else do you want to do?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Should we put that on
We
on site
have more
amenities?
ability to do that than they do, I think.
and
So,
it seems to me if we choose to do what you're asking, it's not just to put a contingency on two issues, it's on the whole budget. Because if things change, it might change everything else that we've recommended.
Yep.
So we would have to present really two totally separate.
We kind of got to commit.
Yeah.
Got to commit.
But I think we can say that if it does turn out that the capital budget does decide to fund it, because they are going to, they're not necessarily looking at us, but they may.
Not yet, but
Not
in the
yet.
future, if
Yeah.
they know that
Yeah.
we're an entity that's
Yeah,
out there,
right.
then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, well,
So it would be more significant, I would think, for them to be able to see it's this budget or this budget. You don't do this. I mean, if you give them money, then here's the budget you submit.
Right.
If you don't give them money, then here are the changes that you're going to affect.
Well, I think one problem with that is that our recommendations are gonna come before they vote on capital funding. And so if we say, we'll fund this if you don't, then they'll say, well, we don't have to fund it because they will.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's,
but we're only talking about two projects.
well, right now we
You know,
are.
right,
Yeah,
well,
but
but in the
this is
future,
something
yeah.
Right, it'd be good to have a process in general.
I think we need to
Yeah,
change our
that's
whole
more important.
timeline, right?
Yeah.
Christie's got her hand up.
Oh yeah, Christy, do you have some input on this process?
Yeah, I didn't see, or I didn't know if you saw my comment. So like, I have to go to Ways and Means on Monday, the 13th. So that's when they're starting to do the first reading and review of capital. So I could get an idea then. But as I've said before, like, it can go through a positive recommendation with Ways and Means, but then when it goes to city council, they're, like, look at the skate park. I didn't get full funding. They took away some of it, and then we had to creatively figure out how we were going to fund it. So that's the, as Donna says, the chicken and the egg.
Mhm.
So capital is going through the process right now.
Yeah.
With the first reading.
I don't know. I mean, it almost feels like fund things that aren't going through capital, and then if capital harpoons them, then I don't know.
I mean,
We could reuse the money somewhere else.
is there can we come back? Could we put in a bunch of our decisions, leaving some money available and then come back
Yeah,
if we chose?
you can absolutely do that because, I mean, basically right now, you're doing what's it called exactly? It's a supplemental appropriation. That's what you're doing this time. It's not part of your regular budget. You can at any point throughout the year. So if you wanted to wait until, I don't know, August, July, after everything from capital and everything from the city's budget is settled, you can come back and that money will still be there and you can totally do a second vote.
Yeah. Well,
Also, by August, September, we have a better idea what's happening with the match, right? Because that thing you forwarded from the CPA Association was like, well,
Oh, yeah.
it seems like it's going to be a little fuzzy and
That's not affecting this
not affecting this year, but
Yeah.
it may affect like, oh, if we're looking ahead, there's gonna be much less match. Do we want to like just keep our extra, the extra eggs in the basket and roll that forward to the next process kind of thing?
Yeah, I think, what we were just discussing about if we left money, I guess what I'm wondering is like when we motion to, I haven't looked in detail at this recently, like when we motion to recommend a project for funding for the other projects that we're not recommending, do we need a motion that we do not recommend funding for those?
I don't think so, because it's what goes to city council is like, we want 10,000 for this, 5,000 for this, 50,000 for this kind of thing. You don't have to say what you're not asking for.
And we could say to people, these two projects, we're waiting to see what city council does. And, we will let you know what we can do for you after we know what's coming from city council.
Although it's a chunk of money, because
Yeah.
that would mean you'd have to be,
Right.
we'd have to assume that we've already prioritized those above other ones in that
Right.
category. And
You're
we
right.
just, so we would have not, if we're holding
Yeah.
whatever it is, $100,000, then we will have not funded a bunch of other things.
Yeah, unfortunately, these are both big items, so it's not.
I mean, it sort of feels like we have to do like whatever we want to do or feel is the right thing to do,
Right, yep.
unless there's anything
Yeah.
committed prior to that.
I think Tom has a comment.
I had a question for the finance or for Christie. I come from a town meeting form of government, so we had to be done with recommendations before town meeting, which was in May. My question is, does the city council take up through June to adopt the budget to begin July 1? Or are they pretty well done by sometime in May?
Oh, are you saying we could take this up and still be on the same timeline of what, like, giving the money?
Right, if the city council adopts the budget and it goes through the mayor's stuff and all the things you got to do, is that done right up to June 30th, or do they generally have that done like mid-May or beginning of June? If that's the case, there's no reason, let's say they decided not to fund X, Y, or Z, and we had said, well, contingent on funding or whatever, we could come back in May or whenever this budget is solidified. We could come back shortly thereafter and reallocate as we need to. And then have another, you'd have a supplemental with the city council for the ensuing year.
You could do that.
And that could be done in a few weeks.
Are you talking about the capital budget or like the city budget?
Well, the capital comes into the city. It's part of the city budget. So you got to wait till the budget's adopted, I think. If capital may recommend $500,000 for various articles, for various projects, gets to city council votes that part of the budget down, then it's down. So after the full budget is adopted and engrossed, at that point, you could come back and very quickly do an adjustment on what was or wasn't funded early on, or make adjustments to percentages.
I think the only issue with what you're describing is there's gonna be a point in like July where your current FY23 budget is gonna have to get rolled over back into the general reserve, and you're gonna start, it'll get tricky with what accounts we're trying to pull from, which is why ideally we're ending the process now in March and going through all that into May, because then otherwise we're gonna have to be, it's gonna be very tricky trying to figure out, okay, are we pulling everything from just the general now? Or now we're even looking into taking stuff from the FY '24. It's just ideal to kind of stay in the kind of timeline we set, but you could
Yeah,
make it work.
I don't know what the city finance department allows for encumbrances, because we won't have a contract at that point, so I'm not sure. Well, if you did it before July 1, let's say they got the budget done in beginning of June, you could get a contract in place and that money could be encumbered. It could roll over for the current year that you're trying to fund it. But it's all timing. It's really all timing.
Susan's got a comment.
Yeah, I think that considering this is the first time we're doing this, we have to keep it simple and clear. And what occurs to me is, I think I'm going to, if I can, I have to look at my calendar, but if I can, I'm going to attend the Ways and Means Committee meeting just to listen and try to read some tea leaves and see what kinds of questions are people asking about these two projects? What kinds of, where do they appear to be leaning? That kind of stuff, so that we can decide whether we want to fund these at all, we want to fund them partially, what we want to do. But it just seems to me that trying to tap dance our way through this during this first time is just not, it's going to be too hard for us to figure out. Yeah, so that's my thought. And that may mean that a project doesn't get funded that otherwise might get funded, but tell them come back next year, I just feel like we've got to.
I think we got to commit, and we got to stick to our timeline, and it is what it is. And I mean, it's unfortunate sometimes that there's a scenario where this could happen.
Yeah.
And if we had could forecast into like what the town may or may not do with their capital budget, maybe in the future we could, but I think for now we got to go with that. We can't put it off.
I think I was going to just say that, I like the idea of kind of keeping it simple this year because it is like our first time doing this. And, if we're trying to do like fancy math, like after June or July, or, like at that point, we're almost going to be opening up applications for next year. So I might as well just apply.
I don't think we want to be those people.
And then, between the time we make recommendations and we open up for funding next year, all of our time is going to be spent like evaluating what we did this year and, trying to improve the process for next year so we can use what we've learned. And, if we can figure out a way to do it better next year, maybe there's a way. I don't know.
Yeah,
She has a hand up, I see.
I was just trying to throw a different calendar out, that's all. But that makes sense, Travis. I think you're right. You walk cautiously this year, make the amendments you need to going forward for next rounds. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and just to throw in the Stewart from the Community Preservation Coalition was even saying like he kind of doesn't even recommend giving any funds to non-city entities in your first year, just because you don't even have like any of those contracts worked out or any of that, which that's up to us. We can or can't do that, but he was really saying like keep it simple your first year because it's your first time doing it. So just wanted to throw that out too.
Okay.
Christy, you might have some more input on this process.
Yeah, I just didn't get a chance to respond to Tom's question. So the mayor has to present the budget 90 days before the end of the fiscal year, which is April 1st. And then city council votes by May 31st. So that's the.
I wish I was working for you guys. We had to have the budget done by February 1st.
That's town meeting, so they can make everybody come out in the snow, and you can make sure you get less turnout and fewer people yelling at you. Everybody's stuck at home.
The town town meeting wasn't until the end of May, so I mean, but we had to have it in. So
Oh,
it could go to what would be Ways and Means, the Finance Committee, but, so, all good. I'm just throwing stuff out from experience and, some things will work and some things won't. It's all good.
Yeah. So I guess I just wanted to bring up that the agenda item we're on right now is a review of public comments. So I didn't know if anyone had any other revelations they wanted to share from the public comments that we saw, or any of that before we move on.
Just sort of echo John's thing that I did appreciate that many of the comments echoed questions we had and thoughts we had. Like nothing seemed like out of left field kind of thing. So I think it feels like things we have considered. We may or may not all exactly agree with them, but they feels like most of the stuff's been raised. And I appreciated being able to see the where people they weren't just like, oh yeah, I like this. They were like, I have like a lot of questions about this one, or I don't like this one.
This.
Right. I mean, Yelp reviews, people are big on like giving negatives, but in this sort of thing, like people will usually like go in and be like, yeah, I'm for this, I'm sort of for that, kind of, for that, and then I'll just ignore the other stuff. So I appreciated that there was a full range of comments.
Yeah, John, you just mentioned the need more research. I think the one that had the most need more research was the Highland Pond one. And we actually had some like wetland scientists responding, saying that they didn't support the project because they didn't think it was as fully fleshed out and like
scientific and
and like maybe it wouldn't actually improve anything.
Yeah, totally. Right. That stuck out to me too. And and I feel like, as non-scientists sort of, that was kind of like our gut feeling too. Like, I love Highland Pond, Park, Highland Pond. It's a cool thing. Like there's a lot in the spirit of it that was cool, but like the actual project, it wasn't quite there. I feel like it was like shooting an arrow at it. Right. But
and then it's going to be like the 50s and everybody will be skating and we're going to have like hot chocolate on the pond and be like, I don't think that's happening.
Right. And I think that even he thought, they thought this is like a conversation starter, which it kind of is, sort of. And I think it has been. So I think in some regard, it's been valuable that it's even put forth. And hopefully folks will come out and kind of get into it a little deeper, literally and figuratively.
Sorry, we were moving forward to the project review part of the agenda.
Yeah, we can move forward to project review.
Okay. So there's just one thing before that. I know last time there was two people, John and Susan, who had some conflicts of interest. I did some more research on that. And the best way for us to proceed is be very specific about what projects we're talking about. You can't really talk about them all at once when there's people who have conflicts of interest, because those two people really, you two should, when we're talking about Agricultural Society and CSO, you two should really leave the room respectively. So there's no way for you to influence the conversation at all. That's the recommendation from the state. So.
Great.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah, and Susan, I know you said you were like seeking guidance on whether you should recuse yourself or not.
Yeah, and they never got back, the state never got back to me, so I don't know, so, but I agree with this. Yeah, I talked with Christian about it afterward, and I agree with this.
For myself, I had a conversation with the ethics attorney, and they were like, we'll call you back. And anyway, but the biggest thing from anybody who's involved in this kind of stuff is like Christian just said, is beforehand, they can't advise you for stuff that you've already said or done or whatever. So beforehand, seek their advice, leave the room, do something like that to make sure that there's no, at least the appearance of anything. Right. And that's most of what we're talking about.
And I guess going along with that, maybe next year, you know, like when the projects first start coming in, we can like, you know, all talk about like whether there are any conflicts of interest, and, you know, if people think there might be, maybe that would be the time to contact them, and, you know, because then there'd be more time. And then I think you probably shouldn't talk about it at all, like throughout the whole process. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Is that what you think,
Yeah.
Christian?
Yeah, that sounds.
Oh, so here's our numbers.
Yeah, we're back to the numbers.
I guess it's kind of hard. You said like we shouldn't talk about all the projects at once, but we kind of have all the projects at once on the screen.
Yeah.
So we have numbers from last time. Chair, where would you like to, should we start at the top again?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I guess just a general question to everyone, like, is this the way, do we want to just like go through all of this the same way we did last time? I mean, again, you know, this isn't going to be final, and, you know, until we vote on things next time, and we can still discuss next time too. But does that make sense to go through these again like we did? I mean, we can do it maybe a little quicker than last time, but I don't know.
Well, I don't think we went through all of them last time, but I also feel like some of them, like we pretty much had staked out, you know, where we think we're going, and I don't see that that's changing, but we're not able to, like, we have to vote on the whole slate, or can we vote on them piecemeal?
I think when we, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you'll be making motions on specific projects.
For actual amounts, right?
For actual amounts. when it
And
comes
does
down
it
to
make
it.
sense to like start that so we can get some of them out of the way? I'm gonna be in Florida on the 23rd. So.
There's very specific language you need to use about the motions. I don't have that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also on our agenda,
Thinking about coming soon, but I'm also thinking about.
and we've been telling everyone that we're going to vote at the next meeting. So
Okay.
I mean, even if we started a motion now, I guess technically we'd be voting at the next meeting. But yeah, I think it might make sense, because I think if we do kind of have an idea of what the numbers are going to be, and we have to be specific about which accounts the numbers are coming from too. I mean, if we kind of have that in general, how we think we would need it, it shouldn't take too much work to just like put it into the formal language that we need.
So, and I'm not sure exactly what you're saying. Like, for me, I need to see the whole thing laid out to see if I want to juggle stuff around. You know, like I can't go one at a time, because I might say.
Yeah. They're contingent on other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I agree.
I think we're mostly talking about like the actual conversations about each project.
Yeah.
Like literally talking about the project, not having this.
Not recommending an amount.
Well, I mean, I think last time, I think what we kind of did is we went through one by one, and then we kind of felt like it was kind of like a yay or nay, and then it was like how much yay or nay, and then we kind of looked at, is there going to be contributing other funding coming in? So that it was a little bit of an organic process, but and I think that's kind of where we started to put in numbers. That's kind of how we left it. I mean, obviously we've got 6 TBDs.
Right.
Maybe we should go with those first and say,
Yeah.
because those are ones we're like, we want to come back to it. If we can take those off the slate and then go back to the ones that we know we're definitely going to fund, and if we're going to fund them 100% of what, or partial,
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we can start with the TBDs because there are no conflicts of interest on the TBDs.
Right,
So that makes
that's
it
true,
easier.
that's true.
Yeah.
Good point.
All right, so do we want to start with Elmer?
Yeah.
All right, so just as a refresher for the committee's scores, Elmer received a 35 out of 55. And for the survey, Elmer had a 3.7. There we go.
And that was one that I think like another thing I was going to put together, but I didn't, was like the top 3 categories of responses for each project. I think I actually did put that together, but I didn't put it in the presentation. So while we're talking, I'll bring that up. But I think that was one where it was interesting because it was like needs more research, great value, and like general support. So
Yeah, and that one specifically had a lot of the mixed.
Yeah.
And negative and yeah.
There's so much unknown about it. It just feels so tenuous to me.
Yeah, I think it's a comeback next year.
Yeah.
You know, it just, there's too many questions, I think, that were raised by people with a lot of knowledge about how effective it would be over the, you know, would this really make a difference at this point? Or does it need to be connected with other things? Or
Can you even do it?
can you even do it? Yeah, so I would say come back next year with something more.
Yeah.
Yep. I concur.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a study would be more in order.
Yes. Right, right, exactly. And that's like shooting from the hip. That's the first, you're like, yeah, I feel like you need to go. Yes.
Yeah.
And if they had come to us and said, we want to study, like, I love Highland Pond. I think it's super cool. It's a gem. Give me some money. I want to study it and find out what we should do. I'd be like, all right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that seems like the right way to go.
Yeah.
And another thing is maybe to suggest to them why.
Yeah.
Because we're guessing on them, you know, like maybe nobody cares about ice skating on it. Maybe there's something else. We don't know.
Have you read Facebook in the last 10 years?
No.
Every time
read
someone
it
starts
ever.
bitching about
Yeah, I'm with
greenfields.
Wisty. Anyway, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so at this juncture, then do we, so.
If I was voting, I would recommend 0.
But so Travis, would we vote? We have to vote on, right?
Well, that was my question earlier, is whether we have to
Yeah.
vote no on something.
Yeah, I
or
can
if
look
we
into
just-
that for the next meeting.
I think we just not fund it. If you don't fund it, it's.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to formally say no or not. I'll look into that for all of you.
Well, I think for all intents and purposes, we're kind of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of seemed.
Then you gotta vote.
I think we probably would, but I mean, we'll do that at the
But
next meeting.
We can vote next
For
time.
the
Yeah,
sake
I wouldn't vote on it.
of, efficiency, I think we're all in agreement.
But I think, so what I remember, the reason I was thinking that we would vote things down is because I thought at one point, maybe Stewart or someone said like, if you think that you would want to fund it, but maybe it needs more, or, they should come back next year, like that's when you would tell them that essentially, like, we're, motioning not to fund this project. However, the CPC, wants you to reapply, you could invite you to reapply next year. I don't know. Christian will look into it, and I'll try to look into it too.
I feel like that gets super fuzzy though, because then we're sort of like parsing language about what we say. Like anybody can reapply for anything by default.
Yeah.
So if we say like, do we want to really like be voting on a statement to say like, we really like it, but we think we should do X, Y, and Z, and then they come back and they're like, well, I did X, Y, and Z, and it like doesn't get funded next time. We're like, you led me on. Like, I think we should just be like,
Here's why we didn't fund it.
we're funding it or we're not funding it. Like it should.
Yeah, it should just be a yay or nay.
Okay.
Yeah, just a yay or nay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll go along with that.
All right. So it sounds like that's
People want to come and ask individual members, be like, why do you think? We can be like, we can talk to them or not. And
yeah.
They can look at the minutes.
Yeah.
Which
will be very detailed.
it's Tom. Just that I mentioned. Never mind.
On the site,
All right.
Right, how
So
we
the
doing?
next one we got is pickleball.
I
So
think I'm
that's-
kind of glad it's kind of fuzzy. I can't hear everything, so
yeah.
All right, so refresher pickleball has requested 300,000 and your scores, it was ranked at a 37. In the survey, it was a 3.1. And I guess I'll share this now just because I just think it's really interesting. I have the charts for each of the projects about the 1 through 5s and pickleball. It was the most
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
You can see it's,
Wow.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah, ones and fives.
People were for it or not.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that.
It seems like pickleball kind of does that, though. There's like,
Yeah, well, and I think, right, like,
that's my tennis court. Get back on your pickleball court.
yeah, but, right.
But hey, we want to play pickleball, like that whole push.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it goes back to the price tag, though.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I get it.
I agree.
If there's some way we could compromise in the middle there.
Yeah.
It would seem to be a better conversation, I think.
Yeah, and I think, right, I think that if we were in a situation, yeah, if we were in a situation where it was like a joint funding with the town from the get-go, and we knew that, once I'd say, if this project goes to the town, to capital or something like that, and the town says, yeah, we're in support of this X amount, we're gonna fund it partially, and then they could come back next year, and then we could, potentially.
Did we ever pursue that with Christie as to, I don't know if she's still on there or not, but as to whether a partial construction might be doable?
Yes, we discussed that. It's because it's basically 60,000 plus or minus per court.
Yeah.
Right, so you could certainly do a portion, but everything gets more expensive if you do it piecemeal,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you could do 2 courts for 120 for.
Right.
Right.
But I think, I mean, again, I don't do this for my living, whatever, but like, if I'm gonna come in and do the site work and stuff, it's like, I'm just gonna stop, I'm gonna paint right here. It's not like I'm putting 3 pinball machines in, I'm putting 1 pinball machine in.
Right.
That's a little
Yeah.
different. I mean, that's an infrastructure thing.
Yeah.
You clear the land, you get the parking.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
You
there's some
feasible.
base amount that,
Yeah, it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like, because I totally would agree. I'd be like, oh, well, we'll fund 1. How about just 1, guys?
Yeah.
Seems like a compromise, but I don't know. I don't think that's a realistic thing.
It's not practical, no.
Yeah.
So
But maybe Christie wants to speak to that.
well, I was gonna say, I can also add, I got like the top 3 of those categories that I put all the written comments into. And the Highland Pond one, the most common was support. Most of the projects, the most common one was just general support. And then it was great value and then more research needed. And then on pickleball, the top 3 were support, too expensive, and not needed. So again, kind of shows like the polarizing.
Yeah.
Most people were in support out of all the comments, but then the next 2 highest comments were it was too expensive or that it wasn't needed.
the other interesting one, I don't know if you all saw there was a Globe article about it. There's now pickleball battles in Wellesley because the noise makes too much noise, and so whoever has their house, right? And so, in theory, that whole Abercrombie complex is getting redeveloped as housing, and right, that doesn't really matter to us. Maybe there's that could be a selling point. A pickleball aficionado is like, I got these courts right next door. They're town land, not the.
Clearly, some people are going to see it that way.
But some,
I don't know.
so I mean that probably shouldn't really go into our
Right.
decision, but it was just an interesting thing to be like,
Yeah.
So all right. So we obviously can't fund all of it, even if we wanted to.
Right.
The question is, do we want to fund some of it, but it doesn't seem like it makes sense for us to say, well, we'll give you 20 grand or something. And then that's very effectively useless. And there's that again, we're now committing money that's going to get kind of wasted because they can't do anything with 20 grand.
Right.
50 grand.
Right.
Although it would sit in an account, and if they like, oh, and then we get a park grant for 100,000 the next
Right,
year.
right,
And
exactly.
you know, and then we come back to CPA and they give another
Yeah, next year
100,000.
the pickleball is out. Nobody does it anymore. Mini golf, come on. You know, I mean, yeah, right, that could happen.
Well,
Think of the things that used to be popular, like contact rollerball. Plates or something.
things happen in steps too, right? So are there steps that could be, that they could take first steps with, like, drawings,
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is like, I'd like to see this go to capital and see how it does there. And see if the reception and the feedback of the survey
Right.
is similar to what we got.
Right. Well,
Because
it
it
wasn't-
seems, pretty.
It wasn't
forward.
put forward this year. It was on the capital
Yeah,
and
right.
it was turned down.
Well, there you go.
So that tells us something, but
Absolutely.
also part of our evaluation, and our scoring was like how much was funded, by non-CPA money. And
Right.
I mean, that could be an argument for this one. That's like, we would like to partner in funding it. But we would need to see that there's some other money somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of
like
other.
if you came with 150,000
Yeah.
from somewhere else, maybe then we would want
Right.
to. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, it seemed like, I mean, maybe they have more data, but it sort of seemed like, yeah, we got estimates at 60,000 and we wrote that on the paper. It didn't actually feel like there was site specs. They're like, it'll fit over there.
I think Christy might be able to answer
Yeah, I
that.
think so.
Well, the other thing too is,
Ended up doing them.
yeah, sorry, the other thing
Yeah,
too is that
I'm
like.
trying to answer all your questions, but you guys are definitely a talkative group. So the court cost was 40,000, Garth. I just want to be clear on that.
Oh, cool.
Per court, and that's by the research. And then it included parking, and then some contingency in there. So at one of the meetings, because I can't remember which one, I was asked by, I believe it was Dave, about if we could fund less courts. And I said the minimum that I would recommend would be 2, and not just do 1, as John was kind of joking about earlier. And then, so projects can be done in phases. That's what I think Donna was referring to. So depending on how things lay out going forward with the rest of your recreation category, one of the things that you could do is earmark an amount for design, hiring a designer, and surveying and getting all the specs for bidding the project. Like with a park grant, you have design money and then you have construction money. So year 1 could be design, year 2 could be a combination of CPC and capital for construction, or we always need a match for park grant applications. So I just want to share that.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other piece that I think is important here is that as much as we saw a lot of enthusiasm from the pickleball people, they hadn't gone out and even tried to hold a bake sale. And, and when we were trying to get the skate park, there was a lot of that effort. And it wasn't like we raised $1 gazillion, but it really showed that people cared enough to do some work for it.
Yeah.
And I think that fits in here someplace.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
35,000. That's no chump
Yeah, that's not chump change. We did.
I mean,
raise
it also
35,000.
was over years. I mean,
Yeah.
People were screaming for a skate park for so many years. And, like being on the Recreation Commission for many, many years, it's like, we took a lot of heat, like, where's our skate park? And I feel like pickleball might be turning into the same thing. I hope that people are still playing by the time we actually get through this process.
Yes, right.
Can I ask Christy, if we were to do something like the design, is that 2 courts worth? How much would you expect a design process to cost?
So just using an example of the skate park, I don't have that in front of me, but I think it was 62 or 65,000.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
My question maybe for Chrissy is like, I mean, I kind of have a little bit of, a problem of the location of the pickleball courts because they're secluded and they're not accessible to, a lot of people. They're hard to get to, maybe for some dude in his pickup truck, but not to kids, not to people on bikes. It's a scary place to get to. Absolutely. And so that location I don't like personally. And I also, so therefore that makes me think the impact, how many people in town are going to be able to really utilize these pickleball courts, even if I could build them, would they sit there?
Wasn't it proposed for Abercrombie Park,
Abercrombie, yep,
which is right on the Montague City Road?
yeah.
Yeah, but how do you get there?
How do you get?
If on your bicycle, if you're 12 years old, or
Deerfield.
my daughter,
It's dangerous.
how would she get there?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, Mountain Road is like the worst. So then I could go down Bank Row, down Cheapside, and then through the tunnel by the scrapyard and get there. Like, yeah, maybe in the 40s or something, I'd do that. But I mean, I'm a little bit of a devil's advocate, but not really. Most people don't even know where Abercrombie Field is,
Yeah.
to be honest.
That is the truth.
And I mean, it's a lovely spot and I think that something should happen there maybe. I mean, I'm just saying, if we're gonna support this, I would really question why it's there and not somewhere more accessible to the people, like the skate park. Years and years and years to find a location that would be accessible to a lot of people, to kids, right? That's kind of one of the most important parts of the thing.
Yeah.
And so then if I say, well, Abercrombie Field, I can get there, me and my buddies can drive there. But then, so who is it supporting? Just me and my dudes? Me and my dudes can go do whatever, whenever. And then, so the impact is really just for that smaller segment of society, like tennis or something like that. And again, I'm not picking on anybody necessarily, but I'm thinking it through and going, well, you can play pickleball at the Y every day. You can play your butt off every day.
Out back?
Inside at the Y.
So, for free?
Oh, no.
No.
Okay, the Y's kind of expensive. I think that's.
Well, but not if you're not.
I have a question, going back to Christy, I have a question for you again on the pickleball. So in the application for pickleball, it lists like the categories for the funds, and it says $25,000 contractual and $275,000 construction. So is that 25,000? Is that supposed to be like the design part of it? That was just my question, because I was thinking like if we were going to fund like a design part, I mean, I would kind of like that number to be explained in the application ahead of time, instead of us just trying to like estimate what a design process would cost, So I just went back to the application to see what it said.
It looks like she's trying to pull up some numbers.
Yeah.
I kept talking to fill the void.
No, there's one down at Green River Park. There's one pickleball court.
Yeah, there is.
Stand there.
Right.
Oh, there's no room and there's no parking.
Well,
You
so
got the
then
dog
why did we
park?
build one there? For
Chris.
Yeah, Travis, I do believe that you are correct. My capital number for the skate park, we had to do a lot of survey and deed work. So that, I think that was why it was higher. But that is, I didn't have that in front of me. So
Okay.
you're right. That's what the
Okay.
25 was. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
I guess you guys, what I'm getting at, I'm sorry if I'm irritating people, but
No.
I feel like it bears more research. If I'm coming up with all this stuff, like literally out of the top of my head, like, dang, I'm like just coming up with stuff. The more I think about it, the more questions I come up with.
Yeah,
I think pickleball's cool. I mean, I guess.
yeah. I mean, in terms of the current situation, I don't think that we foresaw it being such a hot button issue. And what's happened is now the basketball courts are now being used for pickleball and then the dog park people are like, I don't have anywhere to park. And I mean, just parking at Green River Park is an issue anyway.
Yeah.
Without all of this extra stuff. So, yeah.
I think it's theirs.
There's a Facebook page.
Yeah, for the most part, as a dog person, it's not that big a big deal. The times that it really gets to be a big deal are when there are football games going on and the pickleball people
Yeah.
are going, and that, so it's like weekend stuff.
Yeah.
The parking can get a little hairy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just
But
wanted
that's
to,
okay.
I just wanted to point out that it is 7:04 right now.
Oh,
Okay.
So we're crushing it.
Technically, our meeting's supposed, ends at 7, but
It seems like we could put TBD back on
Yeah,
on this
yeah.
one.
We only got one.
But I think we can do one real quick and dirty. I think we
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
I think and that is that the drinking fountain.
Yeah.
It did not, it was too expensive. I didn't see, in any of the responses, any great support for it. So I think that's my belief, that's a no. But other people
and
should tell me.
I just want to, okay, I know Tom's a no. I just wanted to add that from my top 3 categories of comments that projects received, all of them had a positive first comment, by number, except for this project. This one, the most common answer was too expensive. The second most was not needed. And then the third most was like general support. So this was the only one that had like a negative one.
I'm glad to be that my opinion early on has been justified by the masses. It makes me feel
So that
Okay,
means we only have, at least to start on 4 more. And then
Yeah, you have to return.
we'll have to go return, but we,
With the new
yeah,
information.
right.
Yeah.
Right. But that's,
Yeah. And so I wanted to point out that it was 7 o'clock, but like, I'm fine continuing the meeting longer, but if anyone, has to leave or, if anyone wants to make a motion to adjourn at any time, that's your right. But I just wanted to point out the time so everyone was aware.
Well, I guess the question is, Travis, is how far do we want to go? Do we want to try, I'd like to get rid of some more of the TVDs, but I don't want to be here too long,
You'll have to, if you're going to continue, you should have the public comment now and then continue afterward, because the meeting was advertised as 5:30 to 7. So
Okay.
you should have the public comment and then you can keep going.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I would motion that we move to public comment and then just determine if we want to.
Return to this item.
Whoops, wrong.
Yeah, I have to go to a rehearsal that starts at 7. I'm going to be late anyways because I'm on the road, but I'm going to have to get off quick in a few minutes.
Oh, well,
Okay.
at least 15 minutes late if you're like right in the parking lot.
All right. So, okay. So if there aren't any objections, we'll go to the public comments right now.
Yep.
Okay. Christian, can you stop? Yeah, thanks. Just so I can see. All right. Does anyone have I think what did we say? 2 or 3 minutes on the agenda?
This one was 2 minutes per speaker.
Okay. 2 minutes per speaker. And then if we get through all the speakers and someone wants to talk again, you're free to do that as well. So if anyone, I see Nancy Hazard, go ahead. You can introduce yourself and then you got your 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is, I think, the first CPC meeting that I've really been to, and I've been really impressed, Travis, with the amazing analysis that you've done and the in-depth conversation that you guys are having. And the question that I came, but I think you answered it, is that it is possible to do partial funding that you can recommend. Is that accurate? Okay. So and I particularly want to talk about the Highland Park signage project, which ballooned from a very simple project when Joy first posed it to a huge project. And I would love to see, I don't know what it would cost to do, let's say, the mapping and planning aspect of it, and leave the rest for both looking for other funding and maybe coming back next year. So that one, I particularly wanted to say something, and I'm very much, most of what you guys are or have as high priorities, I think are probably my high priorities. And it was interesting to see the chart that you just showed. As far as the Wells Street housing thing, I'm curious why a full 100,000 wasn't there. I would really like to see that there. And I think the money is there to do that. And also I think the barn rehab, I'm not sure you had the full, but I would love to see that also. And I'm thrilled that how high the bike route to Deerfield, how far, that people are really into that. I think that's really important, not only for recreation, but also looking into the future. As most of you know, I'm the climate person. So it could be an incredibly invaluable commuting route for people in the future in a way that doesn't involve climate emissions and stuff like that. So I think those are my biggest comments. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. That was just barely over 2 minutes, so that was good. All right. Do we have anyone else who wants to make a public comment?
George, I'm raising my hand here, Travis.
Yeah.
Come on up.
George Tolumpsis, 27 Abbott Street. I wanted to comment on the pickleball. I appreciate John's reflection on the importance of some kind of recreational site being accessible by multiple modes of transportation, and also people of all different ages, which is one of the emphasis that the advocates for this talked about, it being a multi-generational thing. I also want to point out that this noise issue is very real. So if it were to come back, if it were to come back at a different location, if it were near housing, it's a real serious consideration, because this is a nationwide issue about complaints about the volume of pickleball. And I've seen studies about the decibel level of pickleball contact compared to tennis, for example, is very significantly higher number of decibels. So I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, George. Yeah, right on.
Are there any other public comments?
Anyone can just unmute at this point. You don't have to raise your Zoom hand or anything.
Yeah. I'm gonna check chat here. All right, I don't see any more public comments. No one's put anything in the chat, so I guess we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Thanks for everybody who shared their opinions. And we'll get back to our project, what is it called? Project review discussion, whatever it was called on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, so we were, yeah.
If we're still looking at TBDs, obviously we're not in final numbers on anything. I would also propose that we go no later than 7:30.
Okay.
And also say that, like, one thing that we could all do prior to the next meeting is this snazzy spreadsheet. You can make a copy on your own Google Drive.
Yeah.
And then play with the numbers. And it would be interesting to, like, basically overlay all our numbers. Like, if, assume we're going to spend the full 335, or if someone's like, no, I think we should only spend 200,000 this year, and this is what it would look like. That would be, I think, also interesting. I don't know if there's a good way to, like, actually overlay them, or that.
I think it would be interesting, like, for fully funding. Like, obviously partial funding would make it more complicated, but you can just do basically simulating what the committee would vote. 6 out of 9 people voted or put all the funding towards this project. So I think that could be interesting. I could prepare a spreadsheet and you'd send it to just me individually. Obviously, you wouldn't send it to the whole committee. And then we have that ready for just at the next meeting.
Excellent.
I was thinking,
that's a good idea.
I was thinking, my mind went to, for the partial funding, there could be like a little box plot on each one, but that gets really complicated.
Like a rainbow gradation.
Right.
All the way to.
If you get to pink, it's everything's fine.
Right.
So Christian, would one of our goals be to be like, what total do we want to end up with?
So finance has recommended no more than 335,000. But you can totally go less. You can go slightly more if you feel like you need to.
And you can see the numbers in each column there, the 47,000 under each of the three, and then the 192,000 for flexible. So, and then this sheet automatically subtracts what we have in there and then shows what's left in the green
Right.
for each column.
That's what we have allocated, right?
Right.
Well,
So in fact, we can't, well, if we stayed at 335, we actually can't spend more than 324 because we don't have enough historic, even if we did all of them, to fill up the 47,523.
well,
Right.
it would have to come from flexible.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, flexible, above what we have already.
Right.
But yeah, that's if you kept the agricultural society as 20,000. If you did more to agricultural society, you could get the 335.
Right, yeah,
Right.
yeah, you could certainly
Right.
get to that amount.
Okay.
So do we want to go through a couple more of these before?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Recreation site amenities.
All right, site amenities. Your score for that was a 39 out of 55. For the survey, it was a 3.3 with 62 responses. And I guess I'll just pull up the breakdown for each of the questions, just.
Yeah. And then I can also point out that the top three comment categories in order for this one were general support, too expensive, and then a tie between more research and maintenance concerns.
We talked about the maintenance concerns, so that's clear.
Yep. It sounds like no one has anything to say on this one, right?
Well, I mean, this one's interesting, like it's, Stuart was like, well, it's a little fuzzy, and, we've gone back and forth with Christy about like, there'll be stuff that's gonna be on, on city property. I don't think we have an exact list. It seems unlikely that we would give a full 109 to it, so it feels like, at best, we're gonna be doing partial. This sort of thing seems like it very much would, you got 10,000, you buy one chess table for, Hillside Park. If you get, 30,000, you buy a chess table, and, you also get a cornhole thing to put somewhere else. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think now that we're talking about it, I'm remembering that, there's just so many recreation projects, and that's where our thinking process, we went through, and there were just so many to fund, and we're like, well, which ones, we kind of started to sort of prioritize those recreation ones that we felt like either were the most worthy or the closest. All right, I'm out of time. Yeah, and so that's why we left it, and because it's such a huge amount, and so we can only partially fund at best some of them.
I think it
If you want to
makes
thin
sense
it.
to like return to this one if we see if we have like extra money that could be, and that's something that I can follow up with Christy about, like, stuff, unless she wants to speak to it right now. But I agree, this is something that it's not one big thing, so.
Right.
Now I remember, that's why we left those all as TBDs.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, and there's that, and then there's also like the Highland Park signage, which is in capitals, so that's, these are the tricky ones right here.
So, I mean, even though it seems like it's like low hanging fruit to go up to TBDs,
Yeah,
You know,
TBD for a reason.
Yeah, right.
that's why we did that. Now I remember, and that's why we did it. We're like, yep. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we should focus on and this is what I remember us saying, we should focus on getting some of these ones done. You know, and I feel like I look at, you know, I don't say optics, but in terms of like, oh, here's a project that's partially funded. We can help them finish it, and then it seems really good. Like we helped another project get done, and that's like feel like that's part of like what our job is to like push them over that, push them over the line, and maybe just not funding those ones at all for now.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention, oh, I forgot what I was, when you mentioned like the signage being at, you know, possibly getting capital funding. Also Beacon Park may possibly get capital funding, and we already have money in there for that one. So it's a lot to think about. So yeah, maybe we could come back to that one and go to the bike route. That one's a smaller amount and maybe easier to talk about.
The bike one, you know, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Christy, you go.
Run through the numbers. So bike route for you was a 42. For the survey was a 3.9, and its breakdown in charts looks like that. I did want to note, this is kind of a thing for a lot of the projects. People were very frank about it's valuable to the people of Greenfield, but it isn't valuable to me as a citizen. So I feel like those are non-bikers. So there is a difference between those two numbers, which is reflected. I just thought that was interesting. And then Travis, you got your top three.
And then, so this one was a little weird because the top one was general support. Second one was not needed. And then there was a 4-way tie with like, what was it? 1 each or something, or 2 each, 1 each, between someone who didn't think the project went far enough in, you know, its goals. One that said to fund it in a future year, one that was unsure of whether there was even demand, and then someone who said that it should be funded through non-CPA funding. But the overall majority was general support for the project.
I mean, this is another one of like, I think Stuart mentioned it, and you know, also to John's thing, like we're funding another study. Like COG's done a study on bike routes every 5 years for the last 20 years. So far, we have, you know, a mile of actual dedicated bike trail. It cost $1 million and is like coming to pieces, and it's going to get wiped out next time we have a big storm anyway. You know, this is on road. It's not in Greenfield.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I realize we're allowed to do that. You know, as you know, I'm a big cyclist. This was actually one of the ones I graded the lowest. It was above the Elmer Pond, but
well, and another thing I'll add on this one is, you know, when we talked about some of the other projects with the capital funding, this is one where there's potential, you know, funding from another CPC that we have to vote first, just like the capital funding. So that's another like, but it's also another one of those things that like, unfortunately, it would delay the project an entire year, but we could, you know, the same with like capital funding, we could say, we're not funding it this year, but if you get funding from another source, then come back to us and we can maybe help finish off the funding, you know. So that's just another way to think about it too.
Wonder if I could ask George, if Deerfield votes no, does that mean that the project really doesn't have any integrity?
Yes.
I don't know the CPC stuff enough to know that if Deerfield were to vote yes and Greenfield vote no, what happens with that. You guys would know that better than me. One thing I remember hearing you say was that that you could make it a contingency, that if you were to vote yes, it would be contingent upon the Deerfield money coming in. So Travis, could you indulge me with one other comment?
Sure.
I thought, Garth, you said it's on-road, and I just want to be clear, the proposal is for an off-road trail.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
in Deerfield.
Yes, but I thought you said on-road, so I just want to make sure that was clear to everybody.
But, George, I have a question about that, and I still have to get over the bridge though, right?
Correct. Yes.
And to me, that's a little bit of a non-starter because that bridge is the killer. The bridge is the hardest part of the whole thing. Once I'm over the bridge, okay, I'm in Old Deerfield like mint, but I mean, I've ridden down that millions of times, right? Getting over that bridge is the killer. And if I could get over the bridge, I could get over to the Turner's Falls path, or I can get down to Old Deerfield. But getting over that bridge, man, that's, to me, is the Gordian knot. That's the thing that I'd like to see the survey figure. I want to be underneath the bridge where the people can't get at me. And so that's a hard one. Once I'm over there, like, yeah, I can just turn and go through there. And once I'm in Old Deerfield, there's no cars, it's mint.
I wasn't trying to alter your opinion.
No.
I was just trying to make sure factually people understood what I was proposing.
No, so that still would be a tough thing to, a survey. How would a survey, in your opinion, how would it be able to attack that or work that problem out, getting?
I'm not sure what you mean by a survey. It would be a feasibility study, a survey.
So, okay.
Currently it's a feasibility study to connect Old Deerfield through through the fields and some abandoned roads that would come back out basically right at the bridge.
Right.
It's as close as possible, correct.
Right. It's not a proposal for putting the $1 million bridge across the Deerfield.
No, I know that.
I'm aware of your time. I don't want to take.
Anyway.
So.
Yeah.
Tom, you want to say something?
Yeah.
I just think this should be, I don't know, I think this should be looked at by FERCog. It's multi-town, and, FERCog may be able to help with some feasibility expertise or some funding for feasibility.
If I could just quickly answer that, it was as in the materials I submitted, this exact feasibility study is what FERCog recommended.
Well, what? Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd just like to mention that I think this can be looked at another way. And that's in terms of economics with the town and bringing more people in through town and not just Deerfield, but Greenfield as well, because people go back and forth. And so I think that's a piece of this that we need to kind of look at as we're thinking about this, because as much as it's recreation, it's kind of like people talked about the pickleball as being, all these people would come from other places. The fact is that a good bike trail there will get known and people will come. So,
I'm real torn about it because I've seen and walked on bike and hiking trails that have gone through cities and they've built them up over years, and it totally changes the quality of life. It changes where people build houses. It changes so much. And I would like to see this. I would like to have us see a trail that goes all the way from Just Roots, actually, somehow coming along the river, going I don't care where, as far down as possible. And I'd like to see a study done that's something like that would really draw people in, because we don't have anything good right now. We just don't have it. And it is such a quality of life issue to me.
I just wanted to, hold on, I'll get to your question in 1 second. I just want to point out that it's 7:28 right now. So.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead, Dave.
I'm trying, I don't want to be argumentative with John, and I haven't ridden a bicycle in a couple of years now. It seems to me as though the Gordian knot is something that might be overcome by just getting off your bicycle and walking it across the bridge and getting it back on the path.
Yeah, well, you can try it and let me know how it goes.
Is that not a good idea?
It's not, not really. I mean,
There's a sidewalk, isn't there?
There's a
Not
sidewalk
on
there.
the southbound side. It's a marked bike lane that's filled with shards of stuff.
it is a really dangerous,
Which is
and it's around a corner.
It's a bridge problem everywhere.
And I mean, it's a particularly bad intersection because a lot of people, when they go, if you're coming from Greenfield, you go over the bridge and you turn left across the traffic that's coming up Route 5 and 10
Right.
to get to the Turner's Falls bike path. So in my, the perfect world, like what you're talking about, you want to connect the bike trail in Turner's, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And it's got that awesome bridge. And then you get off the bridge and you're in the rail yard, and then to connect anywhere else, you got to go there. And that's the sucky part.
Which is where the Warner, stone and gravel trucks are always come bombing down there.
What I would like to see is the bike trail go where the Meadows Golf Course is, along there and underneath the bridge.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
But nevertheless.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Oh,
I just,
Hold on, Christian's got something.
okay, I just want to say, I don't want to make you guys have more meetings than you need to, but when it comes down to it, we're going to really need the language and the exact numbers really down and accurate. So if you guys are going to plan on continuing to discuss things at the next meeting and then vote, I'm going to be sitting here really having to focus on making sure things are accurate. And I do my best, but if you guys do a vote and if there's something wrong, it's going to mess up the whole timeline. So I don't know. I would potentially suggest having an extra meeting next week. That's just my idea.
Yay.
How do people feel about that? I'm gonna open my calendar.
I won't be able to make it.
Yeah.
Is it possible to meet on a Wednesday for a special meeting?
Not for me.
No,
Yeah,
This
I
way.
think,
Okay.
and Wednesdays are booked through May.
I think, so Christian, my understanding would be like, if we continue to discuss, we could discuss until we're like
Yeah.
done and we like look at a chart like this and we say, yes, those are the numbers we want. And then then the motion's just gonna be like a formula, right? Where we just like, we recommend, and then we look at this
Vote
chart.
to recommend
Look at this
20,000
chart.
for the barns.
20,000 from historic and 10,000 from flexible to barn rehabilitation or whatever. Like, that's my understanding, right? So if we do all the, I would say we do all the discussion first at the beginning of the next meeting and try, and hopefully if everyone goes home and fills this all out themselves and fill this out and don't have any TBDs, like when you do it, either have a zero, either a zero or a hard number, and then we'll come
Like
back next
gladiator
time.
games, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, and then
We're gonna have the technique to get through this.
Yeah.
And it is great talking about it, but
Yeah, we're gonna have
Go
to,
on.
hard nose.
And when we vote, it might not be unanimous either. Like, you might
Right.
disagree with the motion that we're putting forward and how much we're recommending, but then that's up to the vote. So.
Yeah. I gotta fly, folks. If we have a meeting next week, I'll endeavor to be there.
Right, Tom?
So I guess what I'm saying is I feel optimistic that like maybe our meeting might go a little longer next time, like this, but if we get all our homework done and talk about the numbers ahead of time, have them all written down, that way Christian's not just like trying to remember as we go. Then, I mean, I could even just sit here, if Christian wants to send me like the language for the motion, I can have it printed out and just read it off and then fill in the numbers and just make sure it's like precise.
Okay.
If that's what we want to do. So I guess I'm saying I feel like maybe we don't need to have another meeting, but
Do your homework.
or maybe at the next meeting, if for some reason we can't decide, we could add another one, then we're forced to add another one after that.
Right.
My only concern about that is you'll miss the committee chairs.
Cheers, yeah.
So you'll be bumped back a month.
A month.
And
yeah.
so it's good. And if city council really wants to take some extra time to think about these, they're going to be right up against June 30th.
Yep.
Is committee chairs on the 28th?
The committee chairs is, I think, the 4th.
Okay, so if we didn't finish
But
on
you
the
have to-
23rd, if we did the 30th,
No, but you have to have things like ready 5 days in advance and all that. So I have to look more specifically, but you should, if you want to get through this process and have things talked about at city council in April, you have to be done at the 23rd.
Or schedule a meeting for like the Monday after if we had to, but I think we can buckle down and get it done. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I
Okay,
agree.
we have to, we have to.
So what you're saying, just to reiterate, what you're saying, Travis, is that we all take the spreadsheets, go home, put in numbers that we feel comfortable with, right? And send them to Christian,
Yeah.
and that should get us
And
down the road.
He'll overlay them, and then like where there's general agreement, we can, see where we generally agree, and then we'll hammer out the details, and then once we get our numbers together, we can vote.
Yeah.
and there may be some where we're like, anybody in favor of 50,000 for this one? And we don't have enough, but somebody's like, oh, we have enough for 30,000 for it, or, put an amendment, friendly amendment to change the total to 45,000.
So just be clear, Christian, you're going to send us this, okay, and then we're going to mess with it and we'll send it back to you.
Yeah.
All right, good enough.
Make a copy.
Yep.
Yes.
And then, but we're not having an extra meeting, is that my understanding? The 23rd is it? Yes?
I think so. I think
Okay.
it sounds like it's going to be too complicated.
Go team.
One last thing, we should have a deadline to get stuff to Christian, so he has time to review it.
Yeah.
So what is our deadline for that?
Yeah, you give us a deadline, Christian.
I guess just give me a week. So the 16th, which is a week from now.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll send things out tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Get done before St. Patty's Day.
We did have a motion to adjourn by Donna, I believe.
I second that.
And that
I
was
second
seconded
that.
by John.
Yeah.
Hold on. I guess I'm just gonna do a roll call vote again because I can't even see everyone to know for sure.
It's all right,
So
we're hiding.
motion to adjourn, vote, Garth,
Yes.
Tom, I think he might be gone.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
He has adjourned.
Okay, Wisty,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
All right, I am also a yes. So we are adjourned at 7:36 PM.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, visitors.
So who's doing notes next time?